I used to believe that blood is thicker than water. That family would always have your back no matter what. My older brother Derek and his wife Brenda proved me wrong. Brenda always looked at me with calculating eyes like she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A DNA test was supposed to destroy my life and take away my inheritance. But here is the thing about digging up secrets. Sometimes you uncover truths you never wanted to find. This story begins with my parents' death. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if you enjoy stories about karma and family secrets, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you do not want to miss the twist at the end of this one. It is something you will never see coming. My name is Thaddeus, and I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in what I thought was a perfectly normal middle-class family. My father worked as a construction engineer, spending his days designing buildings and bridges. My mother was a nurse at the local hospital, pulling 12-hour shifts to make sure we had everything we needed. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. More importantly, we were happy. I have an older brother named Derek. He is 4 years older than me, and growing up, he was my protector. When kids at school tried to pick on me, Derek was there to step in. When I struggled with math homework, Derek sat with me at the kitchen table until I understood. We were close in the way brothers should be. At least that is what I believed for most of my life. After high school, I went to Ohio State University and studied accounting. It was not the most exciting career path, but I liked working with numbers. There was something comforting about the way everything had to balance perfectly. I graduated, got a decent job at a mid-sized firm, and eventually met my wife Sarah at a friend's wedding. She was a teacher, smart and kind, with a laugh that could light up any room. We got married 3 years later and had a son named Caleb who just turned 5 last month. Derek took a different path. He went into sales, which suited his outgoing personality. He could sell ice to someone living in Alaska. About 11 years ago, he married a woman named Brenda. She came from a wealthy family in Cleveland, the kind of people who had a vacation home and talked about stocks at dinner parties. From the very first time I met her, I sensed something cold behind her polished smile. Brenda never seemed to like me much. She made comments about my career choice, calling accounting boring and saying I lacked ambition. At family gatherings, she would look around our modest apartment with barely concealed disdain. But I tolerated her because she made Derek happy. Or at least I thought she did. Derek and Brenda had 2 children together. Madison was 9 years old, a quiet girl who loved reading. Tyler was 7, energetic and always running around. They seemed like the perfect family from the outside. Big house in the suburbs, nice cars in the driveway, annual vacations to Florida. But perfect is often just a mask. 2 years ago, everything changed. My parents were driving back from a weekend trip to Lake Erie when a semi-truck crossed the center line. The police told me they died instantly. I try to find some comfort in that, knowing they did not suffer. But the grief hit me like a tidal wave that I am still learning to swim through. After the funeral, we discovered that my parents had left a will. They divided everything equally between Derek and me. The family home where we grew up, their savings account, and a plot of land on the outskirts of the city that my grandfather had bought decades ago. Altogether, each of us would receive about $450,000 worth of assets. It was more money than I had ever imagined inheriting. I thought that would be the end of it. Grieve, settle the estate, move on with our lives. But Brenda had other plans. About a month after the funeral, I learned that Brenda had been going through my parents' house on her own. She claimed she was helping to sort through their belongings, but something about it felt wrong. Then one evening, Derek called me with a strange tension in his voice. He said Brenda had found something in our mother's closet, an old box filled with documents and photographs. Among those papers was a file that made Brenda's eyes light up with opportunity. It was labeled with my name, and inside were legal documents that used the word adoption. Brenda believed she had discovered the ultimate secret. She was convinced that I had been adopted from outside the family, which meant I had no biological claim to the inheritance. What Brenda did not understand, what she never bothered to ask anyone about, was the actual story behind those papers. My mother got pregnant with me when she was only 17 years old. She was still in high school, unmarried and terrified. Her parents were strict and religious, and they could not handle the scandal. So they sent her to live with my grandmother 3 towns over. I was born there, and for the first 3 years of my life, my grandmother raised me while my mother finished school. Eventually, my parents got married. They had been sweethearts all along, but they were young and needed time to get on their feet. Once they were stable, they went through the legal process to officially claim me as their child. The adoption papers were really just a formality to transfer guardianship from my grandmother back to my biological parents. I was always their son. I was always Derek's brother. I learned about this when I turned 18. My mother sat me down and told me the whole story, tears in her eyes as she explained her complicated past. I hugged her and told her it did not change anything. She was my mother, period. I never brought it up again out of respect for her, and I assumed the secret died with her. But Brenda found those papers and saw them as a weapon. I started noticing changes in how Brenda acted around me. At family dinners, she would ask strange questions about my childhood. Where did you live when you were a baby? Do you remember much about Grandma's house? Each question felt like a trap being laid. She also made cryptic comments about family secrets and how some people hide things their whole lives. Sarah noticed it too. After one particularly uncomfortable Sunday lunch, she pulled me aside and said that something was wrong with Brenda. She said that woman is plotting something against you. I can feel it. I brushed it off at the time. I thought Brenda was just being her usual unpleasant self. I had no idea how far she was willing to go. The confrontation came at Thanksgiving dinner about 10 months after my parents passed away. We gathered at Derek and Brenda's house, a sprawling 4-bedroom colonial in a gated community. The table was set with expensive china, and the turkey was perfectly golden. Everything looked picture perfect. Dinner went smoothly enough. The kids played together in the living room, while the adults made small talk over wine. But I noticed that Derek seemed distracted, drinking more than usual and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Brenda, on the other hand, seemed almost giddy with anticipation. She kept glancing at me with a smile that made my skin crawl. After dessert, when the children had gone upstairs to play video games, Brenda stood up and clinked her glass with a fork. She announced that she had something important to share with the family. Derek immediately tensed up and asked her what she was doing. She ignored him completely. Brenda reached into a folder she had hidden beside her chair and pulled out photocopies of the documents she had found. She held them up like evidence in a courtroom and declared that there was someone at the table who had been lying to the family for decades. She looked directly at me and said that I was not really part of this family. She read portions of the adoption paperwork out loud, emphasizing words like transferred custody and legal guardianship. She concluded by saying that since I was not a biological child of our parents, I had no right to any inheritance. She demanded that I give up my share of the estate immediately. Sarah stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over. She called Brenda a snake and told her she had no idea what she was talking about. The two women started arguing, voices rising until they were practically shouting. I sat frozen, trying to process what was happening. Derek just stared at his drink, saying nothing. Finally, I found my voice. I stood up and asked Brenda what exactly she wanted. She smiled and said she wanted proof. She demanded that we all take a DNA test to prove whether Derek and I were really biological siblings. If the test showed we were not related, she would take legal action to have my inheritance revoked. I looked at my brother, waiting for him to defend me, waiting for him to tell his wife to stop this madness. But Derek would not meet my eyes. He just mumbled something about everyone calming down and working this out rationally. That was when I realized I was on my own. So I agreed to the DNA test. I knew the truth. I knew I was my parents' biological son, just born under complicated circumstances. A simple genetic test would prove everything and shut Brenda down once and for all. I told her to order whatever kit she wanted and I would take it. Brenda's smile grew wider. She said she already had the kits ready. She had ordered them weeks ago, anticipating this moment. She also insisted that Derek take the test too so they could compare our DNA as siblings. Derek finally looked up, and I saw something flash across his face. Fear. Pure, unmistakable fear. But he agreed anyway, probably because refusing would have looked suspicious. We swabbed our cheeks that night, sealed the samples in their tubes, and Brenda personally mailed them the next morning. The testing company said results would take 6 to 8 weeks. Those weeks were torture. Brenda cut off all communication with Sarah and me. Derek called once to apologize for the scene at Thanksgiving, but he sounded hollow, like a man reading from a script. I asked him directly if he believed Brenda's theory, and he hesitated for too long before saying no. I noticed that Derek was drinking more heavily. Every time I saw him, he had a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had lost weight. Something was eating him alive, but I assumed it was just stress from his wife's behavior. Meanwhile, Brenda was busy building her case. She hired a lawyer who specialized in inheritance disputes. She started calling distant relatives, planting seeds of doubt about my legitimacy. Cousins I had not spoken to in years suddenly stopped returning my calls. I felt like I was being slowly erased from my own family. Sarah was my rock during this time. She held me when the anxiety became too much. She reminded me that the truth was on our side and that DNA does not lie. She was right, of course, but that did not make the waiting any easier. The email arrived on a Saturday morning in early February. Results are ready. Please log in to view your DNA report. My hands were shaking as I clicked the link. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was Brenda, her voice dripping with anticipation. She demanded that we all meet at her house that afternoon to review the results together. She wanted witnesses when I was exposed as a fraud. I agreed partly because I wanted this nightmare to end, and partly because I could not wait to see the look on her face when she realized she was wrong. Sarah and I drove to Derek's house in silence. When we arrived, Brenda had already set up her laptop in the living room connected to the large television screen. She wanted everyone to see the results clearly. Derek sat in the corner clutching a glass of whiskey, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. Brenda made a little speech about truth and family integrity. Then she logged into the testing website and navigated to my results. She clicked on the sibling comparison between Derek and me. The screen displayed a single definitive line: relationship-full siblings, shared DNA 48.7%. Derek and I were confirmed as full biological brothers, sharing the same mother and the same father. Brenda stared at the screen in disbelief. She refreshed the page. She clicked on different tabs. She muttered that this could not be right, that there must be some mistake. But the numbers did not change. I explained the truth calmly. Our mother had me when she was very young. I spent my first 3 years with our grandmother while she got her life together. The adoption papers were just a legal formality to transfer custody back to my biological parents. I had always been their son. I had always been Derek's brother. Sarah could not resist adding that DNA does not lie, and maybe Brenda should have done her research before trying to destroy an innocent man. Brenda's face turned red with humiliation. Her elaborate scheme had collapsed completely. Her lawyer would have no case. Her months of planning were worthless. But the disaster was only beginning. In her frustration, Brenda started clicking around the website looking for any loophole or error she could exploit. She navigated to Derek's individual results and clicked on a section called DNA Relatives. This feature showed anyone else in the database who shared genetic material with the person tested. My name appeared at the top, listed as a full sibling. That was expected, but below my name was another entry. Marcus J. predicted relationship son. Shared DNA 50%. Brenda stared at the screen. The room went completely silent except for the ice clinking in Derek's trembling glass. She turned slowly to look at her husband and asked who Marcus was. Derek set down his whiskey. His face had gone pale, and his hands would not stop shaking. He opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he confessed everything. 8 years ago, Derek had traveled to Houston for a business conference. He met a woman named Heather at a hotel bar. They spent a weekend together. He never expected to see her again, and he never told anyone about it. He did not even know she had gotten pregnant until this very moment. Heather must have registered their son Marcus in the DNA database, probably trying to find medical information or connect with relatives. When Derek submitted his sample, the system automatically matched them. His secret had remained hidden for 8 years, only to be exposed by the very test his wife had demanded. Brenda's scream echoed through the house. She grabbed the laptop and hurled it across the room where it shattered against the wall. She called Derek every name imaginable, years of rage pouring out in a torrent of accusations and insults. Derek tried to explain, tried to say it was a one-time mistake, but she was beyond listening. Madison and Tyler came running downstairs, terrified by the sounds of their mother screaming. Tyler was crying, asking what was happening to Mommy. The scene was chaos. Through it all, I remained seated holding Sarah's hand. There was nothing to say. Brenda had wanted to expose my secret, but she had unearthed her husband's betrayal instead. Eventually, Brenda turned on me. Her eyes were wild with fury as she pointed her finger and blamed me for everything. She said if I had just given up the inheritance, none of this would have happened. If I had not agreed to the test, she never would have found out about Marcus. I stood up and looked her straight in the eyes. I told her that I did not force her to demand a DNA test. I did not force Derek to cheat on her 8 years ago. She chose this path because she was greedy and vindictive. She wanted to destroy me, but she ended up destroying her own marriage instead. The only person she had to blame was herself. Sarah tugged my arm and said we should leave. She was right. This was not our battle anymore. We walked out of that house and never looked back. On the drive home, Sarah asked me how I felt. I told her I was not happy about what happened. I was not celebrating Brenda's pain or Derek's humiliation. I just felt sad that my brother had lived a lie for so many years. Sad that those kids upstairs would grow up in a broken home. Sad that greed had torn apart what was left of my family. 6 months have passed since that day. Brenda filed for divorce almost immediately. The proceedings were brutal, with accusations flying from both sides. She hired the most aggressive attorney she could find, determined to take Derek for everything he had. Given his infidelity, she largely succeeded. Derek was ordered to pay child support not only for Madison and Tyler, but also for Marcus in Houston. Heather had come forward once she learned Derek had money, and paternity was legally established. Between the divorce settlement lawyer fees and support payments, Derek lost almost everything. He also lost his job. His drinking had gotten out of control, and his company finally let him go after he showed up intoxicated to an important client meeting. The children suffered most of all. Madison stopped talking at school and had to start seeing a therapist. Tyler developed anxiety and would cry whenever his parents were in the same room. It broke my heart to watch my niece and nephew go through such pain because the adults in their lives could not keep it together. About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Derek called me. His voice was hoarse, and I could tell he had been crying. He asked if we could meet just the two of us. I agreed. We sat across from each other at a quiet coffee shop on the east side of town. Derek looked terrible. He had lost at least 20 pounds. His clothes were wrinkled and his eyes were hollow. He apologized to me, really apologized for the first time. He admitted that he should have stood up to Brenda at Thanksgiving. He should have defended me instead of staying silent like a coward. He said he was so afraid of his own secret being discovered that he let his wife attack his own brother. He had been a terrible sibling, and he understood if I never wanted to speak to him again. I let him finish. Then I told him the truth. I was angry, I was hurt, but he was still my brother. We shared the same blood, the same parents, the same childhood memories. Nothing could erase that. I was not going to pretend that everything was fine, but I also was not going to abandon him when he was at his lowest. Derek broke down crying right there in the coffee shop. He thanked me over and over, promising that he would get better. He said he had started attending meetings for his drinking and was looking for a new job. He also said he had been in contact with Heather and was trying to build some kind of relationship with Marcus. The boy deserved to know his father, even if the circumstances were complicated. I told Derek I was proud of him for trying to make things right. That was all any of us could do when we made mistakes. Acknowledge them, take responsibility, and try to do better. As for Brenda, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved back to Cleveland to be closer to her parents. She apparently told everyone that I had somehow manipulated the DNA results to frame Derek. She refused to accept any responsibility for what happened. She painted herself as the victim of a conspiracy rather than the architect of her own downfall. I decided not to engage with her narrative. I did not call relatives to defend myself or post anything on social media. The truth was already out there for anyone who cared to find it. People who knew me understood what really happened, and people who chose to believe Brenda's lies were not worth my energy. Life has moved forward. Sarah and I welcomed a baby girl 6 months ago. We named her Emma, and she has brought so much joy into our home. Caleb loves being a big brother, always wanting to help feed her and make her laugh. I used my portion of the inheritance to put a down payment on a house with a backyard where the kids can play. Nothing fancy, just a comfortable place to raise a family. My parents would have liked that. Derek visits once a month now. He has been sober for almost 7 months, and he found a new sales position at a smaller company. The pay is not what it used to be, but it is honest work. He even brought Marcus to visit last summer. It was awkward at first, but by the end of the weekend, the boy was playing with Caleb like they were old friends. Looking back, I learned several important lessons from this experience. First, when you dig a hole for someone else, be careful. You might be the one who falls into it. Brenda set out to destroy me, but she ended up destroying her own life instead. Second, the truth does not need you to defend it. The truth defends itself. All you have to do is live honestly, and time will reveal everything. Third, forgiveness is not about the other person. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. I chose to forgive Derek not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Brenda wanted to use DNA to prove I did not belong in this family. But in the end, DNA proved something else entirely. It proved that my brother had betrayed his wife. It proved that secrets always find a way to surface. And it proved that family is not just about genetics. Family is about choosing to stand by each other, protect each other, and love each other despite our flaws. Some people spend their whole lives trying to tear others down, never realizing that destruction has a way of coming back around. Brenda thought she was exposing my secret, but she uncovered her own nightmare instead. And me, I am just grateful for what I have. A loving wife, two beautiful children, a brother who is finally learning to be better. A life built on truth instead of lies. That is my story. And I hope it reminds you that no matter what schemes people plot against you, the truth always finds its way into the light. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever watched someone's plan backfire in a way they never expected? How do you handle family members who try to cause drama over money or inheritance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you or made you think, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you are not subscribed, yet join the family so you do not miss the next story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that karma is real and that living honestly is always the best revenge. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate every single one of you. May your family be filled with love and loyalty, and may the truth always protect you from those who wish you harm. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.